G'day and welcome back to the Talking Leadership TV podcast series. Thank you for joining me again. It has been quite some time between podcasts and I'm glad to be back recording conversations with exceptional leaders and talking about current issues in that leadership space. Today's podcast session features a discussion I had with Neil Tunnah, who's the CEO of the Performance Chain and founder of the 24-Hour Leader Program. Neil brings decades of leadership experience and a passion for unlocking human potential that transforms organizations on a global basis. His career spans international markets, including Australia, the US, and the United Kingdom. Under his leadership, for example, the Performance Chain is redefining what's possible for leaders and teams, designing and delivering tailored programs that foster trust, resilience, and sustainable growth. Neil's driven by a vision to make a global impact and building high-performing, values-led cultures. As I said before, I'm really glad to be back recording these conversations, and this is a really good conversation with Neil. I hope you'll join us, but as always, enough from me, and I'll hand over to today's guest, Neil Tunnah. Hey everyone, thanks for joining us again on the Talking Leadership TV podcast series. I'd like to introduce today's guest, Neil Tunnah. How are you, Neil?
Yeah, I'm good, thanks, Eric. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, no worries, my friend. So let's start off with a bit of an intro. Tell us a bit about yourself, mate.
Yeah, mate. So I'm the CEO and founder of a business called the Performance Chain. I've probably had 4 different lives that have led me to this stage. Came out of school was a chippy, then I moved into construction management, then I stumbled my way into professional sport for a lot of years, and then COVID brought us back to Australia in 2020, and was still working in sport a little bit, but the idea for the business was born through that space and some of the challenges the business particularly was facing around leadership coming through and out of COVID. So yeah, we're running Performance Chain now, mate. You got our Australian presence, we've got a UK presence and a North American presence now, which is pretty cool.
Okay, so give me in 100 words or less your definition of leadership, sir.
Yeah, that's a great question. Look, I think fundamentally I would bring things back to great leadership is underpinned by connection, Eric. So we put a huge focus on, we talk about connection, how well that people know people. Leadership and management are obviously very, very different, but leadership is very much, for me, sitting in that space around how do you bring people together? How do you get them aligned? How do you get them moving in the same direction and believing in who they are and believing in what they're trying to deliver as well. I could probably spin it 5 or 6 different ways, but everything for us is underpinned by that connection piece. That's where it starts.
Yeah, 100% agree. I was involved with a presentation last week when they asked me what's at the core of my leadership practice, or at least what I think is core. And I went down the track of it's relationship building, and we're in a people business more than anything else. This was from an association's not-for-profit perspective, but yeah, 100% see where you're coming from. And look, there's no one right answer when it comes to defining leadership. You all you need to do is pick up the literature, and there's any number of definitions, and it's I think people know, they can smell what good leadership is, and they know what good leadership is not. You can just feel that. So, all right. We could go a number of ways with this, but I'm very much interested in where you see the intersection between leadership and the sports arena.
Yeah, mate, that's it's interesting that you said around the feel or the see or the sound of good leadership. I think we're living in a time where we've got a lot of information front and center, almost to the point where it can become confusing for people. You just need to look at LinkedIn as an example, mate, and you see so many different thought leaders and experts who are using that as a medium or a way to share and ultimately build a profile as well. I think what sport taught me, Eric, is that leadership, it's literally about action. So it's about what are you doing, how are you doing it, when are you doing it, how are you responding, how are you reacting. There's a lot of philosophical stuff out there just now, but again, I'll come back to sport taught me the good and the bad. And listen, construction management taught me this as well. The ability to learn from mistakes and bounce back and then apply those mistakes becomes really, really important. Um, apply the learnings from those mistakes. That's the crucial part. And listen, the mistakes, I think the learnings, there's always more learning in error, but I think there's crucial learning and success as well. So I think the success, if we talk about I guess the neurological patterns in terms of what happens to the brain when we get success and therefore become motivated to continue to seek growth and success, I think that's a crucial part of certainly of learning in the leadership space as well.
Do you find, or have you found in your travels dealing with, corporate leaders to leaders in the sports game that they come to understand what leadership means to them very differently? Is it about something else from a sports industry perspective than from a corporate perspective? I'm interested because given
Yeah.
that you've had multiple career pathways, it'd be interesting to get your perspective on this. How do they diverge and what are the same? So I guess what I'm
Yeah.
asking you, and I'm getting a bit rusty with some of these questions, but we'll get there, mate, because there's a conversation to be had here. What are the sames between the two and what are the
Yeah.
differences is what I'm asking. Yeah.
Well, it's interesting because what we've learned, right, is sport moves at real speed and it's forced to move at speed. So it forces you to do things at a tempo that business probably doesn't force you to do that. And what I mean by that is performance conversations. You come out of a Saturday and you have to reflect deeply on how you performed, but then you have to reflect really quickly on how you performed and what you're going to continue to change pretty much by a Monday so that you can put the building blocks in place for success within 7 days. Sometimes it's 6 days. I don't know, and I haven't come across too many businesses that are even willing to think about moving at that kind of speed. I don't think they need to move at that speed. But what we have learned is that if we can develop the skills that allow us to have those conversations faster, quicker, in an intelligent way, in a way that lands to provoke things like motivation and inspiration. I think we can help business move much faster than it thinks it can move at as well. And that's what we've learned a little bit in that crossover space is, if we look at core skills, if we look at character, we look at core skills, and then we look at the application of that within teams, particularly in business, we can get decisions made faster, we can get problems solved faster, and at the core of everything there is human skill. So at the front end of leadership, I think my first sort of venture into professional sport, Eric, taught me more about who I wasn't than who I was at that point in time because I spent probably my first 12 months trying to be what I thought a whole group of other people wanted me to be for them. And actually, what I was missing was the strength in what I do is when I am myself, when I am real and I apply myself as me and then develop those skills that allow me to do that effectively and how I build relationships and connect with people. That's where the secret sauce lay. You quite often go into jobs that have elevated responsibility around leadership, and you go, right, I think the organization wants me to be, therefore I am going to try and be. When, for want of a better terminology, what I've learned is that side of things is nonsense. You have to understand who you are and learn how to apply that effectively if you want to be an effective leader. Quite simply because human beings are smart and they smell bullshit from a mile away, Eric.
Yes, could not agree more. Yeah, the only point I disagree with is the speed at which sports clubs and teams and individuals have to move. I think there's a lesson in that for corporates of maybe not all sizes. I guess something as big as I don't know, Microsoft or Google or Apple might
Mm-hmm.
find it extremely difficult, if not impossible. But
Yeah.
for your solo operators, your small businesses, even some medium businesses, moving at that speed could mean the difference between staying in operation and not. And
Yeah.
If you think about it in the sports world, and I'm talking professional sports here, you've got extremely well paid athletes that um, are there because of their skill sets. You've got administrators who know sports administration inside and out. You've
Yeah.
got medical professionals in allied health. There's a whole raft of multi-skilled, multidisciplinary teams that have to move quickly in response to, in 6 days, we've got another match. In
Yeah.
6 days, we need to get you right. You apply that into the corporate context, take away the sports bit and just add another industry sector. And I think there's a lesson there, but how often industry sectors want to learn from others and take some lessons away. I think there's an untapped gold mine in
Yeah.
the sports management, sports arena that is, I wouldn't say dismissed, but not well understood. And I can understand now why you do what you do because you've crossed those worlds and you've been able to harvest the best of both. So more power to you on that. Um, Let me ask you this: in your travels, without naming the person, give me an example of a leadership lesson that you learned that was positive, and then give me one from a leader that was not extreme but negative, and what did you learn from that? So
Yeah.
one of each.
It's a brilliant question. I'll go back into probably go back into sport here because what I had was someone that I was interacting with has actually become a bit of a mentor since then, and I was having some challenges again trying to land my messaging in a place. And it's interesting what you're saying there about the speed and the perception that everything in sport is highly professional. You've got highly professional athletes, highly driven athletes. You've got highly professional staff. You've got medical people who are unbelievably credentialed. The same challenge in sport or in business lies within the other as well, because ultimately what you've got is you've got a group of people that you're trying to get on the same page and move the same direction, and what you've got is different ideas and concepts and experiences that you're trying to bring together and get them aligned, but also feeling heard at times as well. It's like because that concept of suggesters and decision makers starts to come through there, because if you're a head coach in a sport environment, your decision making is only ever going to be as good as the suggesters or the experts you have around you. So I think getting everyone on that same page is a real challenge. And the reason I'm sharing that story is this mentor that I'm talking about. I was having some challenges, um, again in the early days of sport, and I was trying to get this group of players on the same page, moving the same direction, while still allowing them to bring all their experience forward, because they actually, Eric, they had more experience playing the game at that level than I ever had. So I was there to try and facilitate how do we bring that experience together? How do we get the best of everyone's ideas, get on the same page and moving? This guy Andy Friend, mate, he's an outstanding coach. He's coached at every level of the game. He's now a mentor and supporting lots of coaches globally. Mate, he said really simply to me around, what are you doing to get to their level? And that had a profound impact, because at that point in time, my expectation was that I set the standards, I set the expectations, I expect them to get aligned. And rather than going, hang on, what's the barrier? How do I get to their level and understand them a little bit better? And as soon as I did that, and interestingly, I did it initially through their stomachs. So I cooked them. I brought them round to my house in front of my family on a Friday night before a game. I cooked them some big old steaks. I let them see the chaos in my house, so they got to know a little bit more about who I was. But I sat them down and got to know about them better, and I made the effort to get to know them at a much deeper level than just the superficial coach and athlete relationship, and that unlocked a level of respect and understanding that allowed us to get on the same page and move forward together. So that's probably the best bit of positive advice I've been given. And it sounds so simple, but it was highly profound. What am I doing to get to their level? Um, the probably some of the most challenging leadership I've seen was probably bridges a bit of construction and sport. And I come back to this expectation that people just do because they are told to do by someone with a title or a level of seniority that the perception is that that sets above. So, and all I mean by that is people coming in and telling big groups of experts what to do all the time, rather than drawing in their experience around, right, how are we going to do this? How are we going to work together to achieve this? Some of the worst I've seen, mate, is when you get organisations walking in, and I've sat in a room where two athletes, one's been selected to play at the weekend, one's on the bench. They've been thrown questions, and if the person that is selected to play gets the question wrong, he's been told that he won't be selected at the weekend. He'll be pulled out of the team, and the person that's on the bench will get his spot. So if you think about concepts like that in terms of human motivation, you know, you get the opportunity to inspire and motivate people, or you get the opportunity to drive them through fear. I think one has longevity and sustainability, and I think one gets you really high peaks and really low troughs in performance.
Yeah, no, look, that's it. It's endlessly fascinating. I like watching different sports, and to see how coaches engage with their players, and even on a TV screen, you can get a sense when the team is invested in their coach versus players are on a team because of the name brand recognition, and the coach is who the coach is, and given that they're professionals in their sport, whatever that sport might be, that it's just assumed that winning and a winning mindset is going to be there from the get-go. I couldn't think of a harder job than being a coach who may not necessarily have played at the highest level, marshals hyper professional athletes to give them an outcome that they want. And I think trust, when you talked about that example before about building trust and humanizing yourself to the people that you're coaching, because I think there's and correct me if I'm wrong here, I think there's a subtle but critical distinction between a mentor, a coach, and a trainer, and a leader, if you add that fourth category. And as a coach, you're not really mentoring them because you've got the Rolls Royces, the Ferraris ready to go. It's getting them to coordinate together, and it's that bringing together of it must be an art form because the best coaches in the world are the best coaches in the world for a reason. And what motivated me to ask you this, and it's all part of that leadership conversation, and I'm very much enthused to hear you say what you've said. I watch occasionally the Premier League and was interested in how coaching at that level goes. And when Ange Postecoglou went to Tottenham, what
Yeah.
his leadership pathway has been. Now, I won't throw any shade at the man. I'm proud that an Aussie got to that level. But when you look at his history, he's had more setbacks, I think, than he's had wins. But he keeps going. He sticks to the formula that best suits him. And whether or not he's flexible in that formula, which, if you believe the media hype around him, he doesn't, that he has his convictions set, and I'm sure he does what he can to bring people along. And it was just amazing to see that journey, and it kind of shitty that he's moved on,
Yeah.
and well, they moved him on from the club. But yeah, it was that world of sport is fascinating to me, and definitely not going off topic by asking you that. Now, I might swing it back to, and again, based on your experience, give me some sense, if you can, of let's use your three top leadership skills that you think a leader needs, irrespective of industry, irrespective of
Yeah.
the context in which they work. What would those three things be for you, man?
It's a great question, mate, and I think you've touched on Ange there, who's a wonderful case study in self belief. He understands himself so well that he didn't let the spotlight. And listen, I'm I watch the peripherals of, and I'm going to call it football because I'm obviously European rather than soccer, but I think you look at the peripherals of what happens when you
But
pick up
sorry for
those.
those listening. Excuse me for the wrong terminology. Yes, it is football. Sorry, I've used the wrong term. I'm not going to edit this out because I did stuff that
No,
up.
no, that's
You keep
that,
going, mate.
that's okay. It chucks a bit of a. I'm in Adelaide as well, Eric, so it chucks a bit of a curveball in there when you talk about football. No one knows if I'm talking about AFL or I'm talking about soccer. But listen, you touched on Ange there, mate, and I actually think he possesses some of the skills that I really admire. Um, there's probably a list of 100 things, but I think you're right to try and narrow it down to two or three. Some of the things that you see from Ange is that unwavering self belief, man. He understands and knows himself so well, and his vision for the way that he wants to present himself and the way he wants to present his team. And then when things aren't going well, what I really, really like about what he does is I love his level of honesty. But I also love how willing he is to stand in front of the media circus. Let's be honest, his board are seeing it. The entire football community are seeing it. He protects his team. So he protected his team really, really well publicly. And there's no doubt he's having difficult conversations behind closed doors around performance and what needs to be better and what's going well for them to be successful. But when he presents, he presents a united front and he's unwavering with that. So he's got the self-belief. He's got the characters to stand up and the courage to be who he is authentically. And then he protects and looks after his team as well. You've got young kids that were playing in that team that, probably given the injuries and stuff at the club, you've got young kids playing in that team who it was probably too early for them. But he's backed them and he's put them out there. And when it's gone well, he has celebrated them. And when it's been difficult, he's protected them. And I really admire the way he did that. To come back to some of those, if I had to drill down into three skills, I would put relationship building at the front end of that. And quite often what we hear in business and sport is, I have 2,000 staff members. How am I meant to build relationships with those people? How am I meant to know them all? Well, my argument is if you're not putting the time and effort in to know them all, then at some point there's going to be a moment when they'll lose faith in you because you simply don't know who they are. There's going to be a moment where they question their connection with you, and that will impact their performance. And I'll give you an example here. We have been lucky enough to do some business with a manufacturer who are based just outside Atlanta in the US, and they're a multi-billion-dollar manufacturing business. They've got 8,000 employees over about a dozen sites in the US, but they have a CEO who gets off his backside and walks the shop floor. Eric, he gets out and he shakes hands of the people, the blue collar workers who are actually building the product. He makes time in his month to get out and be seen, be connected, ask questions, and then the feedback that he gets, the stuff that needs to be actioned, he actions things. He gets things done. So I think I look at that and go, motivationally, if there's a guy who's running a business that big and he finds the way to connect at the right level where people feel valued and heard, which I think is a really important part of operating a successful team. I'm chucking that in front of all the leaders we deal with and saying, if a guy running a business that size can do that, what's stopping us? What's stopping us?
That's interesting point. I resonate with that a lot, and I like leaders that can do that, that can get out on the shop floor, as it were, and press the flesh and genuinely ask, how are you? How are things going on the line? Give me some concerns. If you were me, what would you fix? The level of humanization that brings, but I think if I'm being fair in understanding what you're saying, and again, you can take a shot if I've misunderstood this, that part of being able to do that is being extremely self-aware, self-reflective, and have a degree of empathy that your title brings some benefits, but it also brings some responsibilities. And there's no way known that that human being could meet all his 8,000 employees, but he can meet enough of them in his travels that the culture and the reputation is even at the top level of the business. These people give a crap about what we do. It won't be all the managers, and there'll be the occasional narcissist and sociopath that you've got to deal with. But if the boss is willing to do that and is seen to be genuinely listening, not just talking at you, but listening to you, you can't buy that kind of relationship building. There's no marketing you can do that will do that unless you're prepared to get in and have the conversation. That was one thing. If I'm reflecting about my conversation last week where I presented, it was about building a value proposition for membership. Now, this is in the not-for-profit space, and I kept in my mind. I kept coming back to I could dazzle people with the whole journey, but the thing that I've learned the most is if you don't have the ability to hold a conversation, hold people's confidences, and be able to genuinely engage at any level, whether it's people who are reporting to you, your board, or your members or strategic partners, then that the secret sauce for me is in the relationship building. And like you said at the start, and I have no way to disagree with this, most people's BS radar is fairly attuned. If somebody smells that you're not being genuine or that you're full of, they won't deal with you. And once you lose that initial spark of interest from the other person, the other company, your employees, no amount of leadership is going to change that. Has been what I've learned.
Yeah, I agree, mate. I think to support what you're saying here as well, I think every single interaction we have, as leaders, I don't think there's any status quo here. I think you're either building trust or you're eroding trust. And what I mean is through your actions and behaviors. So we hear a lot, and again, I go back to places like LinkedIn. There's so much access for aspiring leaders just now to so much content, and lots of the content's really, really great. I just think we hear a lot about values-based leadership, and I think it's really important. It comes back to that understanding yourself. But I'm more interested in what are the values-based behaviors. And what I mean by that is this guy that's the CEO of this business in the US, mate, he's sitting asking himself, what's most important right now? He's asking himself that question. And listen, he'll have a list of probably 30, 40 or 50 things. But I would almost, I'd put my house on it that he's sitting recognizing the importance of the people in the organization and using that as a way to distill, this is what I need to do right now. So that's that prioritization piece as a skill that I think becomes really, really important for leaders. Do leaders have the tenacity, the courage, the awareness, the self-awareness, or the internalization, but also the awareness of the business at that point in time to sit and ask themselves, what's most important for this business right now? And almost, again, and I sit in this space because that's what we've built a business and off the back of our experience, but the people have to be front and center. The people have to be front and center. And we're living in a time where, our global engagement scores in business, mate, they're sitting below 30% right now. All right. And that's obviously an average globally. So there's some that are sitting above. And I tell you, I'm doing some work with a bank in Adelaide that moved theirs from 70 to 90% engagement in the last 3 months, which I thought was outstanding. But there's lots and lots of businesses that are sitting in that, let's say, 30 to 50 range. And as a business owner, I'm looking at that as a problem that needs solved, number one. But then I'm also going, that means if that's the case, what's the impact on top line and bottom line of our people rocking up to work and not really giving too much care about what they're doing, the way they're doing it, what they're part of, what they're connected to, the reason for everything. And I think that's a problem that needs solved And we could start to dig into the emotional, physical, mental well-being of human beings. If you're rocking up and spending, the majority of time in your life at work, and you're only 50% motivated, then you must be pretty unhappy at times in your life as well, which I think's a societal challenge that we need to overcome as well.
It's a long slog. The process, the the mental um the mental brain drain that comes with what you're talking about if you're not liking what you do. To be fair, there are some of us in wherever you're living, whatever tribe you're part of, that go to work as simply a functional, I'll give my time, I get a paycheck, and I go home.
Mm-hmm.
Now, those people are everywhere. Work is not the priority in their life. It's a means to an end to make
Yeah.
money to either survive or save to go on a holiday, or work is used to fund pleasure and fun and anything but work.
Yeah.
The simplicity of that is there's an allure there that, why worry about all this stuff when, okay, those people exist, and then there's those that want to build careers that have a
Mm-hmm.
different motivation for being at work. So I think if you can get that stuff aligned, more power to you. But I think it's making the experience of being at work and dealing with leaders that understand that it's a people game, that is 50% getting there to helping with building more resilient businesses. And then I think the other 50% is how do you foster a culture that helps that um,
Yeah.
go along from day to day? Because as a senior leader or a CEO, or if you're on a board, the likelihood that you're engaging with those that are helping build your business, your employees, your contractors, consultants, etc., you may not see a lot of them in the time that you're running the business or you're involved in an organization. And so I think the values conversation that we had before, that what value you're bringing to your leadership, I think that's important. And I have found in my travels that the best leaders are in tune with all that stuff, and
Yeah.
they make time to think about, how's my team going?
Yeah.
Are we progressing in the right way that suits as many of us as is humanly possible? You're never going to get it 100% right. I challenge anyone that you might have met or that I've met that can say, hand on heart, yeah, every time I've run a business or I've been in a leadership position, it's all been smooth. There's never been a hiccup. It's 100%.
The lion, mate. The
Yeah.
lion. Anyone that tells you that is lying.
Unless you're fully into command and control.
Look, then we start opening up Pandora's box around self-awareness and blind spots and all that
100%,
kind of stuff.
100%, 100%.
But I think you make a really interesting point, mate. And look, I'm an optimist. I'm happy to say I am an optimist. That I'll always look for the positive. And what I would say in that space, if we have even 30% of our workforce are unhappy, I'm asking myself, what do we need to do around here to remove the unhappiness? What's causing the unhappiness? What can we? And sometimes it's stuff that's completely outside your control, mate. You talk about mental, physical, emotional well-being. Sometimes it goes back to socioeconomic. Sometimes it goes to education, the way people have been brought up, all that. There's all these things that contribute to why someone feels like that at that moment in time. But then I go to this place where we can influence the environment that they walk into at work. So how can we influence it in a way that, when they walk in our door, they don't have to be high-fiving and cheering each other, but they don't feel maybe the level of unhappiness that they feel when they are not there. Now, you don't have to love your role, but I think what you can do, and you use the word tribe, or we would use that sense of belonging, or I am where I'm meant to be right now, therefore I'm not unhappy. For me, if you've got people who are unhappy, mate, that's almost like that's a win. If you're moving them from that place of unhappiness to they get to work, and I don't mind coming here. It's pretty cool. It's all right. I get looked after. I've got people around me that care about me. They can't influence all of these externals that are getting me down right now. But when I walk through the door here, it's all right to be here.
Yeah.
So that's the optimistic side of me. That I think we do as leaders have an opportunity to recognize and better influence stuff like that than maybe we do at certain points right now.
Sure. I guess the fact that a business like yours exists and others that are playing in this space suggests that lots of the thousands of businesses that are out there don't look at this in the way that you're suggesting would be beneficial for them, because there is a payola out of all this. If you've got happy people, you're going to reach those goals that you're after, and you're probably going to exceed
Yeah,
expectations. And that's a good intended consequence, or potentially unintended consequence, sorry, of um, having happy and motivated individuals. The commitment one, I'm still a bit sort of sitting on the fence on that. I mean, commitment
yeah,
can come and go. I think that the motivation bit, the building a culture that is about continuous improvement. So how do we get better? How do we make things better for all of us? Those things set a tone and a different conversation. And I hazard a guess here, but I think a lot of what we've been talking about outside of the leadership discussion is around culture. I think what you're talking about in some senses is how do you build a culture X that'll lead to these outcomes that are positive for the people that build the place. And yeah, I'm optimistic like yourself, but I think it will continue to be a work in progress. So Neil, before we go, I want to ask you one last thing. Crystal ball gazing exercise here, if I can draw your mind that way. What do you see are the biggest challenges in the next 12 months for our leaders?
there's I've had probably 8 discussions with senior business leaders in this space in the last week. And what we're recognizing as a business is an opportunity to really drill down and help some business specifically, because what I believe, I genuinely believe, Eric, we're about to go through the greatest period of speed change since the Industrial Revolution. I think we're about to see the ability for AI to dramatically change the way business works. And I think there's a lot of fear in the market around the adoption, the integration, the implementation, and the sustainability around it. And what we're trying to look at right now is how we can walk shoulder to shoulder with businesses in this space, because it all comes back to people, man. It all comes back to people. And there's a lot of fear out there just now around everything from accountants and lawyers to doctors to manufacturing to even some parts of the trades, and the knock-on and impact on, again, I'll go a house building, commercial construction and stuff like that. There's a flow-on effect all the way through society if we don't get this right. So the opportunity, that's the biggest challenge we face right now in the next 12 months is to help business build the confidence to walk towards it, but have a really clear and sound strategy around change management and a move from where they are now to AI. The identification of the right AI that could work for their business, but then also that, building a strategy, the adoption, the implementation, and taking the people on a journey where they can learn that this can actually enhance what they do, not replace them. I think that's a space where I just see lots and lots of opportunity for it to be enhancement and optimization for people, rather than it's taken over from people. I had a really interesting conversation. We've got some people that work with us in the US, and we've been having a discussion around what are the limiting factors around AI. And if we look historically at email and the internet, they were all designed to create more capacity or allow us to move faster. And I think AI is the same. But the limiting factor is human capacity in everything. So we are people, we have physical, mental, emotional capacity. We have 24 hours in a day. You know, there are, I guess, if you look at it in terms of a sports stadium or a soccer field, a football field, there's 4 white lines around it. And what happens within those white lines happens within those white lines. There's a finite number of things that can happen technically, tactically, physically, emotionally, strategically. And I think that's the potential space for us to find opportunity with AI again. Is how do we help humans create this emotional, physical, technical, tactical capability space so that they can adopt, pivot, and still be of high value for business.
Yeah, that's probably one of the best concluding answers I've had in a podcast for a long while here. So I appreciate that, Neil. I claim no expertise in AI. I look at it as a tool to be used within the business, and you find what niche it will help you with, and you build on that and review it over time. Talk to your people, talk to your members, whoever it is you need to talk to about what their views on it are. In my current role outside of the podcasting world, I'm looking at AI and technology uptake, and all of those issues that you're talking about are pretty much come to the fore. I think AI will revolutionize things in some ways, and the specter of it being the boogeyman that's going to fundamentally change everything. Yeah, I'm not so convinced. I think like the internet, like email, like social media, it'll have it'll change some things. We'll get some things wrong. We'll have to legislate where we need to legislate. In some areas, we won't. I've never quite understood the panic around it, but people don't know what they don't know. And last thing I'll say, because I agree with everything that you're talking about, is I think the term AI is now such a catch-all for lots of technologies and lots of things that are not technically AI, but something else that I think people are spooked because they really don't know how to define it
That's right.
in their context.
That's
So, no, I
That's right.
appreciate this. And look, for those that are listening to the podcast or watching us, you're not the first to have this conversation with me. My colleagues that I studied with at University of Southern Queensland have brought this up as being a key new issue and driver of leadership discussions going forward around different contexts. So, sorry to extend the chat a little bit, but I think the use of AI in helping with strategic decision making, with strategy, with improving our foresight capabilities, improving our futures thinking, and understanding that AI might be able to help generate, like other technologies, 100 possible scenarios, but it's the ones that are realizable that you can actually achieve are the ones that are going to delineate whether you're in business for the longer term. And that's a whole nother discussion, Neil, and would love to have you back to talk on just AI, maybe get a few friends in the discussion, because I think these are discussions worth having, and they're not always a technical discussion. It's more what's the human AI technology interface. And we have so many examples of where that's not being managed well, that maybe we could get it better done with AI. But the way that it's going now, if anyone listening to this or watching this has watched the South Park release of what they did with Donald Trump and the AI that was on there, I for a little while thought that was a real comedian, but it's all AI generated and it looks very real. And the ethics and the issues around that are mind blowing. And I think that's what causes some consternation when we're talking about this. But I think we just need to keep talking. As soon as we stop having conversations and it becomes an all or nothing zero-sum game,
I totally agree. I think I think you talk about that underlying fear around the entire thing. And I think we can look at media. I think we can look at social media. We can look at creativity as well, Eric. And sometimes for innovation and, we talk from a leadership perspective, great leaders create clarity. Sometimes you need those highly provocative, almost, and I've got to be careful of the language. I'm going to say unethical, but I don't mean unethical. I mean those points that live right on the edge of what's right and what's wrong.
Yep.
So sometimes we need those moments to help create the clarity around, right, how can we use this effectively for good? And that's the piece that interests me right now, is that human interface. I know the square root of zip about AI, other than I use a little bit to help provoke creative thinking more than anything in our business. But I'm really interested in, it's the human uptake, and I think at a point there is going to be mass uptake. So then, for a business like ours, the opportunity lies in how do we help other businesses optimize the human, get the best out of the human while integrating a system that works for their business.
100%. I think the AI discussion, and when you talk about ethics, I think there's going to be massive new branches of research around the ethical issues around AI adoption. Already, if you spend too much time on YouTube and LinkedIn like I do, you see the ethics around music, ethics around artwork, ethics around people. So the deep fake stuff is an interesting one. If you look at it, it's perfect rendition. Things like this are well worth discussing because it crosses every strata of society, not just business, and we all have to come to grips with it in some way. But the panic button for me, in terms of has the horse bolted, mate? It bolted a very long time ago. AI is not new. It's how we're applying it, and you just to end the conversation, you made a point when we first started talking about the proliferation of information and the challenges that we've got. This will just add to that layer of complexity. So you either engage with it to your advantage or you don't. And it'll just be a competitive advantage that someone else has
That's absolutely right.
that you don't. So Neil Tunnah, thank you for your time, mate. This has been great.
Thank you, Eric. I appreciate the opportunity to chat, mate, and I've really enjoyed it. I hope we can do it again soon.
No worries. For those listening, this has been the Talking Leadership TV podcast series. It's been a little while since I've posted something, but I'm glad to be able to post this conversation and many more towards the end of this year. Thanks, everyone. Have a great day, rest of your week, and we'll catch you on the next podcast.